Welcome back to Cigar Time, your friendly Tuesday night show all about premium cigars. Yeah, really. How's everybody been the past week?
Good.
How's Paul feeling?
Yeah, how are you feeling?
A little better every day.
After his near tragic accident?
And your new glasses?
These are the
Oh,
new
they are new
ones.
glasses? Very nice.
I
Cool.
like them.
Wow.
Some of you may have noticed that the top of my head is a little different than it's been recently.
Mine too.
Shinier.
A little shinier, yes.
Paul has a big crack in his.
I'm follically challenged, as most of you probably recognize by now.
Follically challenged.
Although not quite as bad as Mr. Clean down there. Some viewers have written in, especially Stephen, you know who you are, and said that I am both funnier and more avuncular without the hat.
He used the word avuncular.
No,
I have to get into his vocabulary.
He makes words up.
And
He makes the words up.
No, that's
guys,
a
we're
word.
doing a serious show here.
Since when?
Yeah, right.
Since when? And since I don't necessarily buy that, plus the hat keeps the glare down.
He's right. You're a lot funnier.
I have to work with these people.
Dude, stop. How long you been waiting to say that?
I like your comments. Hat or no hat. Just send an email in. Just put hat or no hat. We'll tabulate. I'm sure we'll get thousands of responses. Just let me know if the hat comes or goes. And maybe next week I'll put it on so you can see if you don't remember what I look like with the hat. And you can see, I'm getting confused. Let's forget that.
And please put down whether you think he's avuncular or not.
Oh, he's a
And what you
all
think that might
For
mean.
those of you who need to look it up in the dictionary, go to your Funk and Wagnalls and look it up.
I broke my avuncular in high school.
Did you?
That must have hurt,
What
too.
was the recovery time?
It's a long time. Still recovering.
Still recovering.
Nice.
Could have gone pro.
Well,
It was never the same.
Yeah, could have been a pro.
this young gentleman sitting next to me, as I'm sure several of you have recognized from his worldwide tours and Facebook things and all the various
Plus he was
ways he's known, posters in the post office, etc.
Oh, yes.
His name is Michael Hertlax. He is the Executive Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and all-around Major Domo for the Nat Sherman Company. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Nat Sherman products, both from a cigar standpoint, cigarette standpoint. You got pipe tobacco?
Mhm.
Yeah, pipe tobacco, there you go. Nat Sherman's been around for longer than I have, and that's a long, long time.
Not as long as Max, though.
Oh, not as long. Maybe
No,
not as
nothing's
long.
been around as long as
Methuselah's.
Yeah.
And he's going to lead. We're going to do something a little different. Instead of just reviewing a cigar today, we're going to have a whole tasting of his products. And of course, we sell his products, as do many other fine dealers throughout this metropolitan area. And as always, we implore you to please support your local brick and mortars. They're the ones, although the weather is nicer now, they're the ones that in the bad weather have lounges for you to be able to enjoy the bad weather in comfort and smoke. We have 10 stores all over the place, but please support everybody. Support wherever it's comfortable, wherever it's good, wherever it's local. Is this going on too long?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Email says, I know we're thinking the same thing. You know
keep
what
going.
another
Yeah,
email says?
but I wouldn't snore out loud as a subtle hint to Art that he's going on.
They're just jealous.
Beat me to it, that's all.
They're just jealous. Pay no attention. Anyway,
I was
That was
enthralled.
very avuncular of
very much.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Can we start smoking?
Does anybody else
Yeah,
have
you know,
anything
I'm a-
to
I'm a-
add?
I just want to say welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mike.
Happy
Mike
to
was
be here.
also known as a stunt double for Jude Law and Ian McGregor. So,
He said Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes.
I never got called back for that one.
Yeah, it
That's
was the
right,
hype.
you were an actor.
No, I'm a drummer,
Drummer,
which is close.
Okay. Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich,
I'll take it.
He acts like a drummer.
Louis Primo. Anyway,
Primo
this
Grigio.
is a cigar. Primo, he was a boxer.
Oh my God.
Can't
Oh
get
my
by me.
God. Can
Can't
we start
fool me.
smoking?
I tried.
It's
Please.
a brilliant idea.
How about that
Let's-
Mayweather fight, huh?
Let's smoke something.
So let's smoke something.
Now, what are we doing?
So
Michael,
Ready?
Yeah,
lead the
ready.
tasting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Take it away.
Explain.
Keep him
So, basically, to walk you through what we're about to do, this is what I like to call a character exploration. Okay, so
What
we're not gonna we're not doing a tasting of you guys.
Oh, okay, thank
This
God.
is a tasting of this. But really, when we smoke premium cigars, a premium cigar is an experience, right?
Yes.
Wrapper, binder, filler, those components together. And in premium cigars, they're not a vintage product. They're a non-vintage product. So we are always finding what we call suitable replacements for particular leaves or blends or ingredients, so that the experience in the end is exactly the same, right? So we're going to explore the Nat Sherman Timeless Collection from Dominican Republic. It's a Honduran wrapper, Dominican binder, and Dominican and Nicaraguan fillers. And what we're going to taste are the 4 filler tobaccos that make up this particular blend. So these are what we call surullos. They're not pretty. They are specifically one variety of tobacco from one farm, one vintage, one leaf position, all together in one thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to smoke each one, understand what they do, what role they play, see if they behave together and work together, and then we'll smoke the final. What do you think?
That is so much fun. I'm so
Okay.
excited.
Hope we
So
have enough time.
we're going to start with number 1.
Number
And-
one.
You have them all once?
Oh, we're getting there.
Uno.
Number 1.
Number 1. And what I'd like you to do before you light it up is to dry smoke it. And that just means pull some air through it. And you really should do that with any cigar that you smoke. It's not so much to identify flavors, but it's really more to identify problems. So if this tobacco wasn't aged properly, if it wasn't fermented properly, if it was stored incorrectly so that there was moldiness or mildew or something, you would identify that in the dry smoke.
Okay.
So in this case, no mustiness, no mildew, no ammonia.
Nope.
I dry smoked all of yours before we got on,
Did you
so
really?
you should all see
I
that.
could
I
taste
thought I
it.
tasted
Good, good.
something.
And I never mind.
We might recommend that you cut the cigar before you dry taste it.
What kind, now, what, this is which, Nicaraguan or Dominican?
We'll get there.
Yes, sir.
So let's fire up.
That's fire.
So I can also tell you, as manufacturers, we don't manufacture cigars to taste like cherry and chocolate and nutmeg and walks through the park and a day on the beach, right? However, it is important that
How
we
about sex on the beach?
sex on the beach. That's a specific flavor,
Yes,
also
it
a
is.
specific aroma. But
Yes, it is.
the
Scratchy.
we manufacture cigars to be balanced in strength, flavor, aroma, and combustion. And it is that experience that creates a particular blend that is a premium cigar. So in order to get to the blend, we need to understand what the characters are. So we're identifying this first one. As you're tasting it, I'd like you not to pay so much attention to what you're tasting, but pay more attention to what you're feeling.
I feel
So-
sad.
You feel sad. Not so much emotionally. So on the palate, we have 4 regions, right?
Yes.
We get sweet on the tip, then salty on the sides, then acid towards the back sides, then bitter on the top. So when you take a puff of this, where are you feeling the stimulation of the smoke?
Tip. Tip and center.
Mine's center.
Yeah.
Mine's more center.
Yep. Mine's more center than tip.
And in my nose a little bit.
It sounds
As
like
long
a
as we're
personal
above the neck, we're
Yeah, it's good.
We're
It's
good.
It's
solid.
really above the neck.
Center and tip.
So this is from the DR, from the Dominican Republic. This is taken from a leaf position on the plant called seco.
Yay.
So I'm sure us on the panel know what that means,
Yes.
but maybe for everyone at home, a plant is divided into different stages. And from the bottom to the top, it's volado, then seco, then viso, and then ligero on the top. General rule of thumb is, the lower on the plant a tobacco leaf comes from, the bigger the leaf, the thinner the leaf, the faster it burns, the milder the flavor, and the less time it will need for all the processes that tobacco will go through. The higher on the plant you go, the smaller the leaf, the thicker the leaf, the slower it burns, the stronger the flavor, and the more time it will need for all the processes that tobacco goes through. So my analogy for tobacco is pizza. If you made a fresh chunk of dough and you put it in the oven, it's going to take forever to cook, and if you eat it, it's going to be terrible. You take that same piece of dough and you roll it out, you create more space between the cells, it gets a little thinner, cooks a little faster, is a little lighter, right? If you roll it out too thin, it burns in 1 second, you can't eat it. So same principle applies really with leaves. So in this case, this is taken from seco, a little lower on the plant, a little quicker burn, so you can see everyone is sort of burning
Yeah.
quickly
Yeah.
here. So it's important to smoke these differently, smoke them a little slower. But, so we had tip, we had center, anyone else?
I'm getting
I'm not
it
getting
in
anything
the
on the side.
sides, the front sides of the tongue.
I'm not getting
I'm
that
right in
at
the
all.
center.
Yeah,
And
right in the center.
I'll point out one other interesting
It's
attribute to
sweet.
this tobacco is it's
Yeah.
very drying.
Yeah.
Hence Seco.
Sorry?
Hence
Hence
Seco.
seco. Well, seco in this case, of course, means dry, but it's really, it refers more to texture and thickness. But it is drying on the palate,
Yes, it is.
okay?
Clearly.
So this is from Dominican Republic, relatively mild, drying, and focuses towards the front of the palate, especially for my palate on the sweet tip
Yeah,
area.
definitely sweeter.
Yeah.
It definitely.
So I'm going to invite you to put these down.
Yep.
Don't extinguish them. Take a little sip of water, and we're going to move to number 2.
I brought the almonds in the dark chocolate.
That's a different seminar. Now this process really is what we do in the factory, and it's important not just for creating blends, but more important and more difficult, in fact, is maintaining blends, right? So all the cigars that you've smoked for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years,
It's the
arguably those ingredients are not exactly the same, but the experience is the same. And that's because we found suitable replacements over the years to play the same role that a particular tobacco does to maintain the same experience.
Mike, you're talking about the fact that a blend, although people might think of it as a fixed thing, it's really not static.
It can't be.
It has to change continuously in order for the flavor to be static.
That is correct.
Okay.
Like non-vintage champagne,
Yeah.
like whiskeys. The house style is the experience, and so you need to change the blend and reevaluate it so that the show is the same. So I like to use the analogy of a Broadway show. For those of you who see a Broadway show, you can see it 10 times and it's the best show you've ever seen. But the cast has to change.
Yeah.
It's not the same lead role, but they're playing the same part, right? So that the show itself doesn't change. So now we're into number 2. First one from Dominican Republic was taken from Seco. What are you feeling with number 2?
This is on my
Totally different.
sides.
Hmm?
This is definitely on the side.
Sides.
Yes.
I did the retro hail. I mean, it stings up top.
It's
Yeah.
got some strength.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not
does.
doing the rest.
Saliva's back in our mouth,
Yeah.
right?
I'm
So
taking
saliva's
10.
one of those things
I'm sides.
we don't
I'm
talk
getting this,
about.
I'm getting this really on the tip of my tongue.
Yes.
Very much
Very
on
So-
the
much
tip,
so-
on the tip.
and a little bit on the roof of my mouth.
Yeah, the
One
roof.
thing to remember, we've already overstimulated the tip
Yeah, you got
because we
started.
did number 1.
Right.
So anything that goes by that will stimulate it. What you
Right.
want to look for is the new geography
This is definitely on the
and
side.
where you're feeling it that you didn't feel number 1.
Yep.
So for you, sides,
Yes.
Yeah, sides,
Both sides.
big time sides. This tastes like my arrow to me.
Yeah, it's much stronger, and I'm definitely getting it. The top of the tip and the sides. Yeah, for sure.
I don't get Lajero, but
so for me also front sides. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes,
towards the front
exactly.
sides.
Yep.
We have saliva back in our mouth with
Yep.
this.
Big time.
And what's on the front side of our palate? What region?
what the sweet
Salty.
salt. on
And
the
what
side.
what makes us salivate? Salt. That's
Salt.
what we put on our food,
Yeah.
right? So even if you don't taste salt, if you have saliva in your mouth, it's impacting the salty area on your palate. Okay? So let's move to number 3 for a minute. Put down number 2. Take a sip.
You're gonna tell us what this is?
I actually like number 2.
This is from Dominican Republic.
See, I like number 1 better.
This is
I like
Viso. So this is
So it's
one
almost
step
like-
up
Ah.
from Seco. Still below Lajero.
Okay.
I thought Volato was right above the Seco.
Volato's very bottom.
Below.
Yeah, that's the low one.
Gelato,
Number
Seco,
3.
Free.
Lucky
and,
number 3.
and the Haro was the
Quick
top.
dry smoke.
Look, mine's talk. Hi, how are you?
Like
Oh
that.
my God. You gotta be kidding me.
I mean, I think Tia's been smoking something else today.
I think she has too.
Started early.
Like Chicago, vote early and vote often.
Now, one thing you're going to notice with number 3 right away is it's a little harder to get lit.
Yeah.
Everyone's going back to it. So this is Lajero from Dominican Republic.
Right away.
And like we said in the beginning, the higher on the plant, the smaller the leaf, the thicker the leaf, the slower it burns, the stronger the flavor. So this is 100% Lajero, one leaf, one variety, one farm, one vintage. It's literally the same leaf times 3 rolled together.
All together. Yeah.
So that's why this is so difficult to get lit. But from an impact standpoint, certainly stronger, certainly bolder. What
Yeah.
about from a stimulation standpoint on the palate.
The whole front.
The whole front, yeah.
The
Oh,
whole
yeah.
front.
I'm finding it in my cheeks on this one.
Okay, so
It's all the Herod over here.
first one was very tip focused. Second one was further back on the salty area. Again, we've already stimulated that area, so any smoke that hits it will affect that area. So think of new geography. Where are you feeling stimulation that you didn't feel it before?
I'm
in one
definitely
and two?
feeling this on my sides
It's going sides and top.
and the top and the
Kind
roof
of
of my
creeping
mouth.
a little to the back, but not back there. But it's
I got it.
getting roof and definitely sides.
Just
but
an inch
creeping
between
towards
the
the back.
cheek and
Can you feel it
gums.
creeping towards the back a little bit?
Little.
Little, just a
To me, this is
tiny-
strength, not taste.
Certainly more powerful for sure.
Yeah.
But not too powerful.
Saliva impact is there.
Not as much as the second one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's there, but it's not. We're not drooling the way we almost were with number two. We're not
Yeah.
parched the way we
Yeah.
were with number one.
Okay.
Right.
There's also a stripe right down the
This
middle
is
of the
so
tongue,
cool.
all the way.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
So that sort of steamroller effect, I get more on number four, which we'll taste in a minute, but that tends to be a very common Ligero trait, is that straight to the back. But for me, three opens up the back sides, more of that acid
Yeah.
area of the palate, which is also more earthiness, more of that
Creeping to the
bitterness.
back. The retrohale was nice. It wasn't strong at all.
Getting into the back.
So here's what I'd like you to do.
Okay.
I'd like you to put down number three
Oh.
for a minute, and quickly now we've basically illustrated a character analysis of 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Right? 1, mild, faster burning, drier in nature. 2, a little bit slower burning, a little bit stronger, more saliva impact. 3, stronger, slowest burning, bigger body, back of the palate.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
So we know who these characters are. The question now is, do they like each other? Do they work together? So I'd like you to pick up number 1,
Okay.
and I'd like you to pick up number 2. And relight them. Now I don't want you to treat these with the same care and nurturing affection that you would a premium cigar, because these are not premium
No,
cigars.
they're not blended.
Yeah.
So you're going to take the feet, push them together, so you don't get air coming between the two, and then take a puff.
I'm dead.
Now, of course, it's common when we talk to manufacturers, what are you going for with a blend? Obviously, balance, flavor, and everyone tends to say the same thing. We want more flavor than strength, right?
Right.
So typically, it would make sense. You take a mild tobacco, you take a strong tobacco, you put them together, you get medium. What we're tasting here are two relatively mellow tobaccos,
Yeah.
right? 1 and
Yeah.
2. And when we taste them together, it's fair to say that the experience of 1 and 2 together is better than the experience of 1 or 2 by themselves.
Yeah,
Yes.
starting to taste more like a cigar.
Right.
Yeah.
So put down number 2 for me
Okay.
and pick up number 3. And in this case, it's horrible.
Uh-oh.
The flavors literally fight. They don't marry.
No.
And while it would stand to reason, mild plus medium equals strong, in this case it doesn't work.
It's nasty.
Wow, that is terrible.
It's
Okay.
nasty.
So now put down number 1 and take a quick puff of 2 and 3
Together.
together. Obviously, for the sake of timing, we're doing this quickly. This process is a longer
Long.
That's
process.
nice together.
But 2 and 3 work in a similar way that 1 and 2 work, just amplified.
Yep.
Right? And what this illustrates really is that mild plus strong does not meet in the middle. That you need something close to pull it together. So now grab all 3
Oh.
That's what
That's
I'm
and
doing.
take a quick puff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is easier for Tia.
I can't believe you
Nice.
said that.
No comment.
More balance, more complexity,
More like a cigar.
they work together.
Yeah.
And in fact, this was the original blend for Timeless from the Dominican Republic.
Oh, okay.
When we added the wrapper, which is from Honduras,
Mm.
it was still lacking something. So if we talk about notes for a minute, it's got that woodsiness, it's got some body, it's got some earth, but it didn't have that sweetness. It didn't have that sort of coffee, chocolatey note that is so popular. That would really help create more complexity to this. And really, there's only one place to get that, and that is Nicaragua. Right. So let's go to Nicaragua.
Rob, you look like
and let's
you're in
take
your
number 4.
glory over
Wait,
there.
that's like a cartoon right there. He's doing. All right.
Oh, we're going to 4 here.
And it's a
So
memorial
when all
life
4
for-
go in,
Oh, all 4's going in.
So we're gonna light 4 now,
please.
by itself.
Yes, sir.
A lot of smoke.
4 strong. Ooh.
So this is 100% Nicaraguan, and it is Ligero. So
It's
of the
stuffy.
4, it's also what I call the most familiar, because so many Nicaraguan cigars are 100% Nicaraguan,
This is delicious
and
by
what we're
itself.
tasting is 100% Nicaraguan. It is delicious,
This is
Yeah,
delicious by itself.
but it's not complex.
No.
No.
It's not interesting, and should we smoke it in its entirety, we'd be bored to tears. But the tobacco itself,
Now
rich,
it's
It's
chocolatey,
very good. It's
and to
very,
your
very
point, steamroller,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
From the tip of the tongue straight
good. All
down
the way
the back.
Oh yeah.
Which
But-
for me,
But a happy steamroller.
that new geography is right dead center of the palate.
Oh, yeah. Bing.
Right there.
Yep, bing.
So now you've got
Little
this
burn, too. Little
strong,
burn. Yep.
slow burning, interesting character. And the question is, will this character get along? So quickly, I'd like you to pick up number 1 with number 4. And it will basically react in the same way number 3 did. They're too far
Too
away.
far away.
They're too extreme. They don't behave together. They don't get along together because they need friends to help bridge that
Yeah,
gap.
yeah.
Right?
No.
Awful.
No more. I'm gonna continue to smoke number 4.
But now do me a favor and pick up number 3 with number 4.
Oh, did you brush your hair with that?
So now we're smoking 2 Ligeros,
Now we're smoking 2 Ligeros, one from Dominican, one from Nicaragua.
Oh.
and that should be a happy marriage.
I don't know.
Oh, this is pleasant.
Yeah.
This is nice.
It smooths it out.
Yeah.
But again, it's its closest compadre,
It's-
right? To bring
Yeah.
them
But
together.
it's
Yeah,
narrow.
it's better.
But it's
That's
narrow.
definitely better.
Still linear, and now really off balance on the strength side
Yeah.
relative to the flavor side. So now we've identified these 4 characters. The question is, will they all work together?
What about
Shall we
4
find
and
out?
2?
All 4.
4 and 2 are okay. You can try it if you want, but in the interest of time,
Oh.
it was really just to illustrate
Okay.
that again, mild plus strong don't equal medium, right? So now let's go all 4.
Can you guys do it?
And if only we had a wrapper leaf, we could wrap these 4 together.
Have
And
a
it
cigar.
would be a ridiculous N2 bars cigar.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that the 4 of these together
Oh, that's a cigar.
is tasty.
It is
Right.
very tasty.
So now we're at equal parts of a blend, right? We're at exactly 25% of each leaf.
And
When
the
we-
sweetness of number 2 comes in.
You're getting
Really
a nice
nicely.
sweetness.
When we add the Honduran wrapper to this blend, then it's time to tweak these proportions to figure out, do I want a little more of the dryness? Do I want a little more strength of or influence of the Nicaragua? And we do a lot of different blends that way until we finally get to a blend that works.
It's nice.
And then in this case, that is the timeless
Wow.
from the Dominican Republic. So 3 Dominican tobaccos, 1 Nicaraguan tobacco make up the filler, binder is from Dominican Republic, and the wrapper is from Honduras. 6 sizes, and this particular blend has been in Cigar Aficionado's top 25 3 years in a
Yeah,
row
yeah.
with the same blend. $6 to $9. I think you'd be very,
Sweet spot. Yeah,
very
sweet spot.
hard pressed to
Yeah.
find something
So
that's
mellow
that
now.
successful,
All
that
mellow.
complex, that price.
I can't believe you got them all.
Scott did the same thing.
Oh,
You talking
my.
about me? They got nice cheek muscles.
What's that? Small man.
What do you think? Interesting.
Very cool.
I think
Well,
it's
it
great.
gets sweeter.
Exactly.
Cigar actually gets sweet.
Very tiny.
Now the interesting thing, as you smoke these, it would be interesting to take 4 and 2 together. Again, to illustrate, in this case they work better than 4 and 1.
Yeah.
But now again, what we're tasting is this sort of equal parts. But in blending, and certainly more importantly in maintaining blends, this exercise is so critical. Every time you get new tobacco from the farm, every time you buy new tobacco to use in a blend, every time you bring in new wrapper, you need to do this exercise to make sure that the characters are still getting along.
How do you remember?
Notes.
You're right.
Yeah.
Do you keep like hundreds of number threes so you can compare the number?
No,
Completely different
no.
taste.
So you have to outline what the final experience is, right?
Okay.
What you want to remember in the end is what is the experience of the timeless collection from Dominican Republic, for example, and then as you're finding suitable replacements based on this exercise, then you start incorporating that into a blend and you compare new blend versus original blend, or new blend versus last blend.
Now,
is
if you were
safer.
doing this for real, like
Yep.
not in a store, and how long would this process take?
Months. In fact, we're already doing this process for other tobaccos as they're coming in, just to understand what they are. And from a factory standpoint, it's what makes inventory so critical. If you don't have enough inventory in your warehouse, then you have no ingredients, and then you can't put together anything new or maintaining old. So part of this character exercise is just to understand sort of what's in the pantry, so to speak,
Yeah.
so you know what you have available to use moving forward.
Is this a Nat Sherman thing, or is this like a standard across?
Well, it's pretty industry standard exercise, but that being said, it's the most expensive part of manufacturing, right?
Rob.
To go from leaf to cash. And in this case, this is 4 years for sure.
Wow.
In the interest of time, Leon, I understand you're going to join us again next week, right?
Yes, sir.
We'll
And we're going to smoke the final.
Yep, we're going to smoke the final and get into more of what the Nat Sherman line is. Scott, I know we have events with Nat
Oh,
Sherman,
jeez. Yes, we do.
and we're running out of time.
Between now, between tonight and the next 2 weeks, you buy any 5 Nat Sherman and you'll get a free one. And then we have events next week. Next Friday, the 29th, we're going to be in Fraser from 12 to 3, and then Ludwig's Corner from 5 to 8. The specials there are you buy 5 and you'll get 2 free. One from Nat Sherman, and we're going to give you one. If you buy a box, you get 4, or 20 or more, you get 4 plus a crystal ashtray, which I haven't seen, but I understand it's absolutely beautiful ashtray. So, so that's next Friday, Fraser and Ludwig's, and then on Saturday, here in Horsham from 12 to 3, and then we're switching to Freehold from 5 to 8.
Freehold.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Cool.
Well, Michael, I want to thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Great to
Very-
be here.
very-
Awesome.
very educational.
We got this in the
We hope
stores.
you at home learned a lot from this, and it's time for us to say goodbye. Quickly.
Life's too short to smoke sweet cigars.
What?
Cheap cigars.
He stole my sweet.
Paul,
Smoke often and smoke happy.
let's move it.
Remember, cigar day keeps the doctor away.
Oh my God.
We need,
Ciao for now, everybody.
we need a disclaimer.
Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next
Hi,
week.
Mom.
Bye.
Bye, Dad.